Hey, and welcome back to Strange Minds 6. I'm your host, Ruby, and today we're going to be getting back into the book of Superstitions, a handbook of folklore, myths, and legends from around the world by D.R. McElroy. But before we begin, I would like to ask that you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. And without further ado, my dear friends, we're going to get into Native American mythical monsters. I might say these names wrong, but I am trying my best, so please bear with me. And with that, my dear friends, grab a snack, grab a drink, or sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Native American mythical monsters. As in the previous section, monsters of the Inuit often have ocean connections too. Binai Yi Aghana, Navajo. This is the monster who kills with his eyes. His spy is magpie. Del Gid, Navajo. This is the horned monster. Dichin Hastin, Navajo. Hunger Man, the largest of 12 ravenous creatures, causes the painful suffering of hunger in people. Hakaz Astiza, Navajo. This is the cold woman who causes the freeze that kills the crops in winter. Canon Disistontis Iroquois. They have grotesque winged heads that fly around searching for things to eat. Because the creatures have no bodies, they can never be satisfied or satiated, and they are doomed to hunt forever. These creatures are frequently created as the result of a terrible act, such as murder or even cannibalism. Kachituasuk, Penobscot, and other tribes. Kachituashku is a man-eating bear the size of an elephant, with legs that don't bend. It has enormous teeth that can pierce many men at once. Mishibisuik Sioux. These creatures are an underwater panther that roam rivers and lakes, waiting to drown unwary victims. The beast is a bizarre-looking concoction of a saw blade, dorsal fin, a single curved horn, a single eye, and a spiked tail that could crush a man. It may also be covered with red hair. This description sounds rather like that of an Ice Age woolly rhinoceros, or some say the skeleton of a stegosaurus. Sioux tribal lands originally encompass parts of the Dakota and Montana, which are some of the richest sources of dinosaur fossils in the world. Owl monster women, Yakama. These monsters eat the world's vermin, snakes, rats, lizards, etc. but unfortunately enjoy the tasty flesh of human children the most. The monsters are considered extremely dangerous, as the owl is the harbinger of death. Tales of other owl-like creatures abound, including the Apache big owl, man-eating ogre, and the southwestern La Lechuza, which is often seen before some unfortunate luck befalls the one who saw it. Sa, Navajo. This is an old age woman who drains the strength with the passing year. Sharp elbows, the two-faced monster, Sox, and other plains tribes. A human-like creature with literally two different faces, sharp elbows, mutilates and or kills its victims using its razor-like elbows. To gaze upon the two-faced monster's second face is to meet death. In some traditions, one face is attractive, the other is hideous. SW. I'm not going to say the full name. Navajo. Shamans who use their magical powers for evil. SWs can shapeshift into the form of any animal, but frequently choose revered animals such as coyotes, owls, ravens, foxes, or wolves. The purpose is to inflict pain or death on the victim. Stikini, Creek and Seminole. So-called man-owl Stikini are evil shape-shifting witches that can assume any form, but especially like to appear as giant undead man-eating owls by night and humans by day. Each night they are said to vomit up their entrails and hang them in trees, allowing them to shapeshift, to then return at daybreak and swallow the organs to become human again. The creatures feed on human hearts, which they pull, still beating, from the throats of their victims. They return to their homes with the hearts and cook them in magical pots before consuming them. A minimum of one heart a night must be consumed to keep the creatures alive. Yuktena, Cherokee and other tribes. One of many different monstrous snakes, Yuktena is said to have terrible curved horns on its head and to be the most difficult to kill. It bears magical scales on a body the size of a tree trunk. A scale from the creature will give a hunter good luck for the rest of his life. One of the few ways to kill it is to shoot an arrow into the seventh scale from its head. African Americans. Not all African Americans identify with being of African descent, particularly with regards to Caribbean countries. Some African Americans identify as Haitian, Jamaican, or Dominican, for example, or some Puerto Rican as well. The arrival of European imperialists resulted as it did in other parts of the New World, and the massive die-off of indigenous land populations due to exposure to unfamiliar old world disease like smallpox, measles, typhoid, and cholera. This depopulation effectively cleared the way for African slave labor in the Caribbean and the establishment of African American populations there. West African West Africans worked in the vast and lucrative sugar plantations, with the area producing almost 90% of the world's consumed sugar during the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. When slavery was outlawed, sorry you guys, that was my alarm for my meds, but let's get back to the story. When slavery was outlawed, former slaves were pushed aside and indentured servants were brought in from China, India, and Southeast Asia to work the fields. The sugarcane crop was devastating to the ecology of the islands, resulting in depleted soils, naked hillsides, and polluted water. The production on the big plantations declined fairly sharply in the 19th century. The imperial powers such as England, France, Spain, and the US all but abandoned the Caribbean. Except for some small holdings each nation held as possessions, which became little more than holiday playgrounds for the wealthy. The remaining West Africans became the native population of the islands. Many of these people migrated to the US eventually and brought with them their legends and folk tales from not only West Africa, but also the cultures that developed in the islands. The best known of these is voodoo. Voodoo, alternative spellings, is a religion with its roots in the religious practices and beliefs of West Africa. Enslaved West Africans brought this religion with them to the Caribbean islands and nurtured it as a means of rebellion against their enslavers. There are many different branches of voodoo: Cuban voodoo, Dominican voodoo, Puerto Rican voodoo, etc. But the discussion in this section will mainly refer to Haitian voodoo and Louisiana voodoo. The groups of slaves that brought the roots of voodoo to the islands, particularly the land of Saint Domingue, which eventually became the nation of Haiti and Dominican Republic, were mainly taken from an African kingdom that existed in the 17th century in what is now Nigeria, Togo, and Benin. The word voodoo is from the Fon dialect in the region that means spirit or God. As slaves from other parts of West Africa mingled with the voodoo practitioners, as well as the remains of indigenous Native American populations, a unique religion all their own arose. When Catholicism was imposed on the slaves by frightened white plantation owners, the rituals of that religion were added to the emerging slave belief system, and the original voodoo religion of West Africa was reborn as voodoo. The term for religions that arise from a blending of several religions into one practice is a syncretic religion. Modern upper-class Haitians no longer practice voodoo, but rather Catholicism, though many in the poorer classes still follow voodoo traditions. New Orleans was founded in 1718 and became the capital of the French-owned Louisiana Territory. The city was established by the French Mississippi Company to act as a port for staging supplies to the Caribbean and shipping refined sugar back to Europe. It was also a slave camp where the bitterest and angriest slaves were taken to be tamed, quote unquote, for sale to plantation owners. The city was part of the U.S. purchase of the Louisiana Territory in 1803, and that change of ownership coincided with a series of slave uprisings in Haiti, which were fueled by the spiritual beliefs of the voodoo religion. The revolts eventually drove the French from the island, and most of them fled to New Orleans, taking many of their French-speaking voodoo-practicing slaves with them. So voodoo became established in New Orleans and spread to other places in the U.S. southern states. It changed and grew as it spread, becoming a well-established, if highly variable, living system of beliefs. Unlike the religions of many indigenous populations, voodoo is monotheistic. This theology is at the heart of Catholicism, which we know had a huge influence on voodoo. In practice, voodoo believers called voodoo saints superimposed the Catholic saints over the top of their own native gods' spirits to get around the strict limitations placed on the practicing of their African religions. Voodoo is not the only religion imported from the Caribbean, of course. Santeria Lusumi from Cuba, Espiritismo from Puerto Rico, Cumina, Jamaica, and Quimbios, Martinique, as well as practices from parts of Latin and South America, also gained followers in the U.S. It is important to understand when looking at the religious influences on African Americans that we must include the major religions, particularly Christianity and Islam, and to a lesser extent Judaism. While Catholicism was pressed on many early New World African Americans, huge numbers of them willingly embraced various Christian religions, especially Methodist and Baptist sects. Roughly 80% of African Americans currently identify as Christians, with somewhere between 2% and 8% self-identifying as Muslims. So while we speak of syncretic religions in this discussion, recognize that these religions apply to a relatively small number of African Americans. And that, my dear friends, is where we will leave it for now. The next chapter is going to be Voodoo and Santeria gods and goddesses. And after that would be American mythical monsters. But I hope that you enjoyed this chapter. And I hope to see you next time, my dear friends. This has been Ruby, signing off.